The reading of the will took place in a lawyer's office that smelled of old paper and false condolences. My father was gone, and with him, the pretense. My mother sat stiffly beside my brother, Kyle, her hand patting his arm as if he were the one who had lost everything. I was the one who had lost everything. The lawyer's voice was a dry, monotonous drone. He spoke of assets, of the house, of life insurance policies. And with every word, the truth, cold and sharp, settled in my chest. The house went to my mother. The investments, the car, the bulk of the estate, all to Kyle. For me, there was a single, symbolic item, my grandmother's tarnished silver locket, something my mother had never liked. My mother couldn't meet my eyes. Kyle shifted in his seat, a poorly concealed smirk playing on his lips. In that moment, a lifetime of small sacrifices, of paid bills, of swallowed disappointments, crystallized into a single, shattering realization. I had not just been the less favored child, I had been a resource. A bank. A fool. A strange calm descended upon me. The tears wouldn't come. Instead, a clear, cold resolution took hold. As my mother began to speak, her voice trembling with a rehearsed explanation, I didn't hear the words. I simply reached for my phone, opened my banking app, and with a few quiet taps, I canceled the monthly transfers I had been sending my parents for a decade. The first act of my revenge was not a shout, but a silence. I quietly canceled all transfers. I grew up in a modest neighborhood in Ohio where the houses were close together, but the emotional distances could be vast. From my earliest memories, the narrative was set in stone. Kyle was the golden boy, the one with potential, the one who needed support. I was Sarah, the responsible one, the one who would manage. When Kyle made the football team, it was a cause for celebration, steaks on the grill, a new jersey. When I brought home a straight-A report card, my mother would glance at it, offer a faint "that's nice, honey," and pin it to the fridge, already asking if I could help Kyle with his math homework. His successes were events, mine were expectations. This dynamic only solidified as we grew older. I worked 2 part-time jobs to put myself through college, graduating with honors and a mountain of student debt. Kyle found himself for a few years, his tuition and living expenses generously covered by our parents, money I now suspect they didn't truly have. I remember my mother calling me during my final exams, her voice thick with worry. "Sarah, your brother is so stressed about his future. We had to lend him money for a trip to Mexico to clear his head. You understand, don't you? You're so strong." And I understood. I understood that my strength was my curse. It made my needs invisible. I built my business, a small but thriving digital marketing agency, from the ground up. It was born from sleepless nights and a ferocious will to be self-reliant. But my success didn't change the family ledger, it just made me a more lucrative asset. The requests started small. "Sarah, the water heater just burst. You're doing so well, could you?" Then, "Kyle's business idea just needs a little seed money. He'll pay you back, I promise." He never did. I paid for a new roof. I covered their property taxes when times were tight. I funded my mother's essential kitchen remodel. Each transaction was framed as a testament to my capability, a gentle manipulation that felt like love. "We're so proud of how you've made something of yourself," my father would say, right before asking for a small loan. The checks I wrote were my desperate bids for approval, for a love that was always conditional, always transactional. The final straw, the one that broke the camel's back, came 6 months before my father's death. I discovered, entirely by accident, that while I had been scrimping to pay my own business taxes, my parents had secretly taken out a second mortgage to cover Kyle's failed business venture. They hadn't just used the money I gave them, they had leveraged their entire future for him, all while still accepting my monthly contributions. When I confronted them, trembling with hurt and rage, they looked at me with genuine confusion. "Sarah, why are you being so dramatic?" my mother had said, her tone wounded. "We're a family. We help each other. Are you trying to punish us for loving your brother?" That was their masterstroke, gaslighting. They twisted my justified anger into a character flaw, my pain into an attack on them. I was the problem for pointing out the problem. I left their house that day feeling a chasm open inside me. I had spent my life seeking fairness, a balanced scale. I never expected gratitude, but I did expect fairness. And I was finally beginning to see that in this family, fairness was a currency that did not exist for me. That's why when I received the call about my father's sudden heart attack, the grief that came was tangled with a dreadful, cold anticipation. I knew, with a certainty that chilled my soul, that the final accounting was at hand. The reading of the will was not a formality, it was an execution. Sitting in that leather chair, listening to the lawyer, was worse than I had imagined. The modest family home I had helped pay for, the life insurance policy I had believed would be split, all of it, funneled to my mother, with Kyle as the sole beneficiary upon her passing. My father's old watch, a cheap, tarnished thing he never liked, was left to me. The locket was for my sentimental nature. But the true dagger came next. The lawyer, avoiding my gaze, mentioned a final matter. A home equity line of credit, taken out just 8 months prior. The amount made me dizzy. It was more than the house was worth. My parents, in their final, desperate act to fund Kyle's latest sure thing, a franchise for a premium juice bar, had leveraged the very roof over their heads. The payments were astronomical. My mother finally broke the silence in the car park, her voice a sharp, brittle thing. "Alice, what is the meaning of this?" She shoved her phone toward me, the screen displaying a failed payment notification. "The transfer failed. Your father is barely in the ground, and you're already causing problems? That money is for the credit line. Do you want them to take the house?" Kyle stood behind her, his hands shoved in his pockets, looking more inconvenienced than concerned. "Yeah, Alice, this is a really bad time for your little power play." I looked at them, these two strangers who shared my blood. The dam of a lifetime broke, not in a flood of tears, but in a wave of terrifying clarity. "The transfer didn't fail," I said, my voice eerily calm. "I cancelled it. And all the others. Permanently." The silence that followed was absolute. My mother's face went from shock, to confusion, to raw, unfiltered fury. You cancelled it? How dare you? That is our money. After everything we've done for you? We raised you. We clothed you. This is how you repay us? By stealing from us. Repay you? I echoed, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. I have been repaying you since I was 18. I've paid for the roof over your head, the taxes on this property, the food on your table, and every one of Kyle's failed fantasies. I'm done. The bank is closed. My mother's eyes widened in theatrical disbelief. How can you be so cruel? To your own family? To your mother, who just lost her husband. You are punishing us for loving you. Kyle finally stepped forward. Just fix it, Alice. Transfer the money. This childish behavior stops now. You have responsibilities. I looked him dead in the eye. My only responsibility now is to myself. Good luck with the juice bar. I turned and walked to my car, their stunned sputtering fading behind me. For the first time, I had said no, and the world hadn't ended. It had just become very, very quiet. Instead of calling back immediately, I went dark. I silenced their numbers, sent their emails to a special folder labeled quarantine, and focused on my work. The silence was a bomb. It lasted for precisely 36 hours. Then, the siege began. My phone lit up with calls from numbers I didn't recognize, my mother, using friends' phones. Voicemails piled up, her tone shifting from wounded martyrdom to cold fury. "Alice, pick up. We need to talk about this like adults. You're being hysterical." "Fine. If you want to be petty, be petty. But we need this month's payment. You can make it up to us later." "Do you have any idea what you're doing to my blood pressure? Your father would be so ashamed of you." I finally answered on the third day. "Mother," I said, cutting through her tirade. "I am not hysterical, petty, or cruel. I am bankrupting myself to fund your and Kyle's irresponsibility. It stops now. This is my final decision." "You are destroying this family," she shrieked. You are choosing money over your own flesh and blood. No, I said calmly. You did that when you chose to see me as an ATM instead of a daughter. Do not contact me about money again. The topic is closed. The manipulation escalated. She called my business partner, Mark, sobbing that I was having a mental breakdown after my father's death and was making irrational financial decisions. Thank God Mark knew me better. He listened patiently, then said, Mrs. Miller, Alice's financial decisions are her own. I suggest you respect that, and hung up. It was emotional manipulation 101, and seeing it fail from a distance was both satisfying and deeply saddening. 3 days after I had cancelled the transfers, the tone shifted from manipulation to outright threats. The emails started arriving, carbon copying my professional contacts and a few key clients. Subject: urgent matter concerning Alice Miller's integrity. To whom it may concern. It is with a heavy heart that I must inform you that my daughter, Alice Miller, is engaging in fraudulent and predatory financial behavior against her own family. They were trying to scorch the earth, to ruin the reputation I had built with my own hands, hoping the social and professional pressure would force me to capitulate. I didn't respond to the emails. I had my lawyer send a single, terse cease and desist letter to my mother and Kyle, stating that any further attempts to defame me would be met with a lawsuit for libel and intentional interference with business relations. The phone call that followed was my mother's last, desperate gambit. Her voice was a low, venomous hiss. You think you're so clever with your lawyer letters? You ungrateful little bitch. We will tell everyone who you really are. We will make sure you never work in this town again. I took a deep breath, the last breath I would ever waste on her anger. Then do it, I said softly. But know this, if you try, I will sue you for every penny of the over $200,000 I've given you over the last decade. I have every transfer, every check, meticulously documented. I will take what's left of the house to get it back. Your choice. The silence on the other end was profound. I heard a sharp intake of breath, and then the line went dead. A week later, I heard from a mutual acquaintance. The bank had started foreclosure proceedings on the Helic. Kyle's juice bar franchise had pulled out after the initial investment fell through. The golden boy had no gold left to mine. Reality is hitting them hard. And for the first time in my life, I am not there to cushion the blow. The fortress of my boundaries, once so fragile, now stands firm. And inside its walls, I am finally, terrifyingly, free. The opportunity for reconciliation came not from my mother or Kyle, but from my father, from beyond the grave. A thick, legal envelope arrived from a different law firm, one I didn't recognize. Inside, alongside a small, separate certificate of deposit my father had started for me when I was born, a paltry sum compared to what he'd lavished on Kyle, but meaningful, was a handwritten letter. It was dated 2 weeks before his death. My dearest Alice. If you are reading this, I am gone, and I have left a mess behind. I have been a coward. I have watched your mother coddle Kyle and use your strength as a weapon against you for years. I told myself it was to keep the peace, but it was weakness. The credit line, the will. It was all wrong. I knew it was wrong even as I signed the papers. You were never second best. You were the strongest of all of us. You built a life while we were busy dismantling ours. I am so deeply sorry I never had the courage to tell you that while I could. The money enclosed is a token, an insult compared to what you deserve, but it is yours, free and clear. Please, don't let their bitterness harden your wonderful heart. Forgive an old fool. With all my love. Dad. I read the letter in the parking lot of my office, and for the first time since this began, I wept. They were not tears of anger, but of release. He had seen it. He knew. His apology couldn't change the past, but it validated my pain in a way nothing else could. It was the crack of light under a locked door. It was a process. I didn't call my mother and declare peace. But I did reply to her next, less vicious email with a simple, I received a letter from Dad. I would like to talk, but not about money. The topic is permanently closed. The dynamic had shifted. The weapon she had always held was gone. We met at a neutral cafe. The conversation was stilted, painful. She didn't offer a full-throated apology, that was beyond her, but she admitted, in a halting, defensive way, to perhaps relying on you too much. She told me Kyle had moved to another state for a fresh start, which I understood to mean he was fleeing his creditors. Our relationship was not mended, but it was being slowly, carefully rebuilt on new, more honest ground where I held the blueprints. It was a process. When he proposed to me on a windswept beach at sunset, my now husband, David, didn't get down on one knee. He simply took my hand, looked me in the eye, and said, "Alice, you are the strongest, most whole person I know. I don't want to complete you, I want to build a life with you. Will you let me?" It was the antithesis of a transaction. It was a partnership. We built that life together. My business flourished, no longer sapped by a hidden drain. We bought a house we loved, and I decorated it without a single thought of what my mother would think. The guest room was always available, but my mother's visits were infrequent and short, governed by an unspoken but mutually understood set of rules. We spoke on the phone every few weeks, our conversations a delicate dance around safe topics like her garden club or the weather. It was a distant peace, but it was peace. Sometimes, on my birthday, a card arrives from her with a shaky signature. There is no check inside, no veiled request. Just my name, written in her hand. And for the first time in my life, that feels like enough. I learned that freedom wasn't about cutting ties in a blaze of glory. It was about building a life so full and authentic that the old chains simply rusted away from disuse. I learned that forgiveness is not a pardon you grant others, but a weight you set down yourself. It doesn't mean what they did was okay, it means you are no longer willing to carry the pain for them. The ledger of my family is closed. The one I share with David, with my friends, with myself, is written in a different language altogether, one of mutual respect, of chosen love, of healthy boundaries that aren't walls, but the gates through which only the worthy may enter. My story is no longer about what was taken from me, but about what I have built from the ashes. And it is finally, wholly, my own.